Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Hello!
Today, we are taking a fascinating and I think often uncomfortable trip behind the curtain of creative genius. Our mission is to really look at the roots of success, specifically in the ruthless world of comedy.
Right.
And to examine the intensely high personal and professional stakes involved in, making you laugh.
Yeah, and we've got a stack of material here that it's just profoundly insightful. It links these psychological mechanisms that turn childhood pain into this hyper-observational comedy.
And it goes all the way to the business side.
All the way to the brutal, fickle business models of Hollywood. It's like a complete look at the cost of being funny.
And the thing that immediately jumped out at me, the premise that really makes you stop and think, is that success isn't just about raw talent.
Not at all.
Our sources suggest there's this requirement that you have to have acquired, quote, enough damage to get you in the game.
Yeah.
So we're going to unpack that surprising mechanism, the one that turns personal pain into professional profit.
It's a really jarring idea, isn't it? That pain is some kind of creative prerequisite.
It is.
One piece we looked at, it recounted a comedian who was starting out and just realizing his own life, hardship, a double divorce. It felt, insufficient compared to the giants.
Right, like compared to Richard Pryor.
Exactly. They referenced Richard Pryor, whose grandmother ran a brothel, and the feeling was, I wasn't a genius, I just had enough damage to get me in the game.
Wow.
It's treated like this essential entry criteria.
I have to admit, that idea that you actively need trauma to even play the game is deeply unsettling. So let's dig into the how. Why? Why does going through hardship translate into being a more effective comedic observer?
The mechanism they describe is hypervigilance.
Okay.
Hardship creates this deep sensitivity. The person who goes through pain, they just don't feel safe in the world, so they are constantly scanning.
Always looking over their shoulder, so to speak.
Constantly looking to understand why the world is the way it is. And that sensitivity, it becomes a survival mechanism first, and then, a creative superpower second.
That's a powerful reframing, because we usually talk about hypervigilance as something people try to, deprogram or heal from.
Right.
But the sources are arguing that this heightened state of alert is actually the foundation of their success.
Absolutely. That obsession and that relentless attention to detail is why comedians are masters of observation.
That's why they see things we don't.
They can spot the tiny, awkward interactions, the precise shift in a waiter's expression, the microaggression between a couple that most of us just miss.
I can't help it.
They couldn't not see those details because their brain was wired to constantly assess the environment for threats or, in this case, for material.
And this sense of insecurity, it naturally breeds an almost aggressive need for self-sufficiency, right?
Yeah.
The sources connect this inability to trust others to take care of them with, extreme independence.
Correct. And that fuels their careers. The lack of trust led to hyper-independence and a mastery of execution, what we'd call strong executive function.
So it wasn't just about art.
Not at all. It wasn't purely artistic curiosity driving them. It was a deeply ingrained search for professional safety.
I see.
If they couldn't trust people to provide emotional safety, then they would master the mechanics of the career.
How open mics work, how to get booked.
How to write a perfect joke structure, yeah. They became obsessed with the business mechanics as a form of self-preservation.
But wait a minute, isn't calling hyper-independence or workaholism the light side of something dark?
Yeah.
Isn't that just rationalizing poor personal behavior?
Well, that is the core tension they highlight.
Okay.
They are professionally rewarded for their worst qualities. The obsessiveness, the drive, the inability to stop working.
But the problem is that those exact same traits.
They absolutely limit their ability to connect personally. They struggle with intimacy, with collaboration, and most critically, they cannot easily relinquish creative control.
Because they've spent a lifetime ensuring they are the only person they can rely on.
Exactly.
And that inability to relinquish control, it doesn't just stay in their personal lives. It projects right onto their careers.
Oh, for sure. The material describes creative disputes with studio executives or producers where not getting their way felt like being abandoned in a primal way.
So it's not about the joke.
It creates these massive, emotionally intense fights over, minor script notes. The fight isn't about the joke itself. It's a projection of that unresolved need for safety and parental approval onto the professional relationship.
And speaking of a primal loss of control, the sources use the analogy of parenting, which I found incredibly relatable.
It's the ultimate reality check for a hyper-independent person, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can't fire a child who wakes up at 3 a.m. for 4 months in a row.
No, you cannot.
One source recounts getting a herniated disc from the sheer effort of rocking a baby
Oh my gosh.
and describes the resulting exhaustion feeling like being drunk for a year.
That gives you such a vivid idea of the sustained cognitive impairment.
Right.
You're forced into a situation where you have zero control, which is the complete opposite of the meticulous control they apply to their careers.
It forces them to shut that off before they walk in the door at home. It forces them to learn, finally, to be present rather than constantly ruminating on work fixes.
It's a collision of their need for control with an immovable force.
And that experience helps us transition neatly into the performance world, which is also, it's also characterized by profound risk and a lack of control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's move to the performance stakes now, because our material draws this stunning contrast between the physics of stand-up comedy and music.
It's night and day.
It really highlights just how brutal and fickle comedy is by comparison.
The difference in the value proposition is just
Yeah,
night and day. In music, success is cumulative.
it built on itself.
If you write 3 or 10 brilliant songs, you have a foundation for a lifetime of touring. People demand to hear those old hits.
They want you to play the hits.
You can be the Killers, play Mr. Brightside 50,000 times, and the audience loves you more for it every single time.
But comedy has, and this is a quote, zero compounding.
Zero.
Every new hour, you start completely from scratch. If a comedian tries to coast on last year's best material, they are immediately labeled lazy, or even worse.
A ripoff. Yeah. The key is the role of the unknown.
The unknown.
Yeah. Music is loved precisely because the audience anticipates and knows the chorus, right? It confirms a beloved pattern.
Right.
But comedy requires the uncertainty of the joke for the mechanism of laughter to work.
The surprise.
The moment you know the punchline, the value is destroyed. It's a disposable currency.
Which means stand-up is a truly brutal career path because you are forced to practice in public.
Mm-hmm.
There is no private lab where you can test if a joke is going to work.
Bombing is just.
Right.
It's inevitable. The sources call it R&D, research and development for new material.
And bombing isn't just a failure of the joke. It's a failure of trust.
Yes. The material explains that often the joke itself is fine, but the audience senses nervousness, that wide-eyed tank bomb energy, and they pull back.
What exactly is that tank bomb energy? Is it like visible panic or something more subtle?
I think it's the sense that the comedian is relying on the audience to save them, to prove their worth.
They look desperate.
They look scared, their eyes are darting, they're desperately needing the laugh, and the audience reads that as weakness and instantly loses confidence.
You have to project comfort.
You have to be Elvis, where the audience is there for the whole confident vibe, not just the lines.
That must be incredibly hard for people whose origin story is based on insecurity and hypervigilance.
Oh, it is. But the sources do offer a tactic to combat this, the advice to lean into the bomb.
Like Norm Macdonald.
Exactly. Norm Macdonald's unique genius was that his relationship was with the joke, not with the audience's approval.
That's fascinating.
It means removing the component of self-worth from the immediate reaction. If the joke is good, you trust the joke, not the laughter.
It's the ultimate separation of self from performance.
It really is.
That level of mental discipline to survive the stage, it's immense. But now, let's shift from the immediate judgment of the stage to the long-tail assessment in Hollywood.
Which is a whole different kind of pressure.
A completely different beast.
It is. Stand-up offers instant feedback. The silence tells you everything.
Right.
But in film, the judgment is delayed. A movie faces critical and financial judgment immediately, but its true cultural success that might only be revealed years later.
You're talking about films like Walk Hard or Heavyweights.
For sure. They might have performed modestly or gotten mixed reviews on release, but 15 years later, they're continually watched and cited as these enduring favorites.
So the audience's repeat viewing matters more than the opening weekend.
Exactly. But unfortunately, the business mechanism that allowed those films to survive and become cult classics, it was decimated.
The great DVD collapse.
That's it. And this is critical to understanding why big studio comedy is struggling today.
So tell us more about the economic earthquake of the DVD collapse.
Well, comedies used to rely on DVD sales to almost double their initial revenue. A film that made, say, $60 million at the box office could pull in another $60 million on DVD revenue alone.
And that profit stream just vanished.
Almost overnight when streaming took over.
And when that profit stream disappeared, studios had to optimize for one thing only:
The box office opening weekend.
Which means comedy became a very bad financial bet, especially globally.
Right. The jokes, the language, the cultural references, they don't... Right, which translate very easily.
And this leads to a devastating doom loop.
It does. Studios take fewer big comedy bets, which leads to fewer opportunities to break the next generation of comedy stars, the Amy Schumers or Adam Sandlers.
So what's the solution?
The material suggests it has to come from cheap, groundbreaking innovation, essentially the Clerks or South Park model of finding success outside the established financial system.
It requires a reset button.
It does, because the cost of failure is now just too high for that mid-budget, star-making comedy film.
Now, in this environment of high stakes and high failure rates, collaboration becomes essential, right? You need people around you who are willing to give painful, honest notes.
Especially when your self-worth is so tied up in the work. You need the no man.
The no man.
Yeah, there's a brilliant anecdote in the sources about hiring a director specifically because he dared to call an idea thing-tacky during the job interview.
Wow, that's bold.
That painful note proved he cared more about the integrity of the product than he did about simply pleasing the boss.
That relationship requires immense security, doesn't it? Because on the flip side, we hear about the danger of the room killer.
Oh, yeah. The room killer, the person who brings a negative, critical vibe, who shoots down ideas without offering concrete fixes.
And just generally disrupts the atmosphere.
This matters so much because studios are choosing collaborators they want to interact with for years. If you're difficult, regardless of your genius, you become a liability.
So the social dynamic and just being a reliable collaborator are just as business critical as the quality of the joke.
Absolutely. The sources strongly advocate for the mentor system. They reference the guidance provided by people like Gary Shandling, who offered confidence, notes, a model for behavior.
And that sets the standard for successful artists to pay it forward.
It does. And for those breaking in, the strategy hasn't changed.
Over-deliver to a ridiculous extreme.
That's it. The advice was clear. If you are asked for a few sample jokes, you write 100. You work for free initially to make yourself so undeniably indispensable that life without you is just unimaginable.
It's about maximizing control by maximizing value.
Which loops us right back to that hyper-independent survival strategy.
Let's wrap our analysis by returning to the creative mantra cited in the sources. Great comedy must be funny, wise, and true. Of those three foundational elements, which do the sources claim is the hardest to achieve consistently?
Funny. Funny is always the hardest.
Why is that?
Because, unlike wisdom or truth, there is no reproducible formula. It's pure instinct. And to access it, you have to actively suppress your ego and your inner critic.
You have to separate the creation from the judgment.
Yes. You have to achieve the separation of the flow moment, the creation from the judgment moment. The moment you start worrying if it's good, you've already stopped being funny.
And the sources draw a fascinating fine line when it comes to edgy or dark material, linking it directly back to the comedian's perceived character.
Yeah, they argue that a comedian with a good heart can get away with almost anything because the audience senses their fundamental goodness. They cite Jimmy Carr as a prime example.
So even with the darkest subject matter.
Even then, the audience understands the true message 3 levels below the joke.
So if you're perceived as honest and kind at a fundamental level, you are given a pass to explore controversial topics.
But if a comedian is perceived as, quote, screwed up and saying something demented and you kinda mean it,
At crucial, trust is lost.
the joke falls apart because it feels like malice rather than exploration.
And the act of joking is seen as a way to heal.
Joking about sensitive topics is seen as a necessary salve. It's the way we prove we can try and draw some levity to serious issues rather than admitting an issue is too serious to treat. It is an act of bravery.
Finally, we observe how the internet is just completely complicated taste.
Oh, completely.
In the past, niche subcultures could thrive quietly. Bands that only sold 20,000 records were worshipped by their fans.
And now, success is almost exclusively measured by massive global appeal. The ability for niche tastes to exist in isolation it's gone.
Everything is judged by everyone.
Subcultures are instantly globalized and judged, leading to mass conflict. You see people who enjoy the clean, mainstream comedian suddenly getting mad at the filthy comedian purely because content they never would have sought out just shows up in their feed.
This has been a truly comprehensive deep dive. We've traced the path from the deeply personal pain and hypervigilance of childhood right through to the high stakes of creating art in this this volatile business environment.
What our material reveals is that the secret fuel for the industry's greatest work is often that desperate early drive for safety and acceptance.
And that drive requires immense, almost irrational self-belief to survive the public scrutiny and the financial volatility that we just described.
It's true.
We saw that figures like Jim Carrey and Adam Sandler were defined by a kind of intense youthful madness. They just knew they were destined for greatness.
But that belief has to be matched by skill.
It has to be matched by the tactical skill to fight and win every single creative battle.
So we'll leave you with this question to mull over. If you had to choose between being a genius who was always right about their ideas and being a good hang who was easy to collaborate with, which is more likely to grant you the sustained success needed to survive in the business today?
Yeah, and consider whether being too obsessed with being right is ultimately the fastest way to become that dreaded room killer and cost you your shot.